On 7th October 2023, the Palestinian militant organization Hamas launched a surprise attack on Israel, wherein they launched about 3,000 to 5,000 rockets on Israel from the Gaza Strip that has been under control of Hamas since 2007. In response to this attack, the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, has said that Israel is at war and that though Hamas started this war, Israel will end it. And as a consequence of the attacks, thousands of innocent children, men and women have lost their lives on both sides. This chart provides you with the details of how many people have lost their lives on both sides since 2008. A major reason for the conflict between Israel and Palestine is for the ownership and control of Jerusalem. Now, when you look at the map of Jerusalem, it is divided into two parts. On one side, you have West Jerusalem, which is heavily dominated by the Jewish population and is under the control of the Israeli government ever since they got their independence in 1948. On the other hand, you have East Jerusalem, which is dominated heavily by the Palestinian population. However, the Israeli government occupied East Jerusalem in 1967. The Israel-Palestine conflict is one of the most controversial conflicts of our times, and it has divided the world on both sides. On one hand, you have 165 countries that recognize Israel as a nation, and on the other hand, you have 138 countries that recognize Palestine as a nation. In order for us to understand the Israel-Palestine conflict, it is important for us to understand the historic background of this conflict. And in this video, we are going to discuss the historic context of the Israel and Palestine conflict and also understand the importance of Jerusalem for Jews, Muslims and Christians. The roots of this conflict are not decades old. They are not even centuries old. In fact, they are millennia old. Let us go back to 1020 BCE when the Jewish monarchy was established and the region of Israel, which is currently the region of conflict, was known as Kingdom of Israel, and the monarch of this kingdom was King Saul. 20 years later, in 1000 BCE, King David conquered Jerusalem and made it the capital of the Kingdom of Israel. 40 years later, his son, King Solomon, built the first temple, which is of utmost importance for the Jewish community. It was a holy place for the Jewish community and became a place of spiritual importance for them. In 586 BCE, the first temple was destroyed by the Babylonians and they conquered Jerusalem. Not only that, but they sent the Jewish community into exile. However, 50 years later, Jews returned to the land and rebuilt the first temple, which was later known as the Second Temple. In 332 BCE, Alexander the Great conquered Jerusalem, and after that, the Romans came and conquered Jerusalem in about 63 BCE, and in 70 AD, they destroyed the Second Temple. It was also during this time, in about 6 BCE to 4 BCE, that Jesus was born. Jesus was born in the land of Bethlehem, which is close to Jerusalem, and he was born in a Jewish family. Not only that, but he also used to preach in Jerusalem, and it is also in Jerusalem that Jesus was crucified and resurrected. Hence, Jerusalem is a holy place for Christians for this specific reason. It is also the place where the Church of Holy Sepulchre was built, which is the place of Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection. On the other hand, it is of importance for Muslims because Jerusalem is the place from which Prophet Muhammad is said to have ascended to heaven. That is why Jerusalem is of utmost importance to Christians, Jews and Muslims. And this is why the three communities want to have control over the land of Jerusalem. This area collectively is called the Temple Mount and is of utmost importance specifically for Jews and Muslims. For Jews, it is the place where the first and the second temple were built, and hence it becomes a religious and spiritual place for the Jewish community to worship. The Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque are built inside the Temple Mount. Al-Aqsa was the place where Prophet Muhammad arrived on a night journey from Mecca. It is from the stone of the Dome of the Rock that Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven. The Temple Mount compound is the site of the Dome of the Rock to the north, Al-Aqsa Mosque to the south, and the Western Wall, which is the remnant of the Second Temple on the southwest. Time and again, this region was ruled by Romans, Arabs, Egyptians, Turks, etc. And as a result of the rule of different kingdoms, the Jewish community had to leave the land and settle elsewhere. From this region to Europe, where they settled. For centuries, Jews were subjected to violence and injustice, first at the hands of the kingdoms that ruled Jerusalem, and later on, where they settled in Europe. They were treated as second-class citizens in many of the European countries, specifically the countries that were influenced by Adolf Hitler. It was only until the 19th century that Jews started to believe that they have to be collective and they have to move out of Europe back to their homeland in order for them to live as first-class citizens, because they accepted the fact that they would not get the same treatment in Europe. This understanding of the collectivism of Jewish community wanting to go back to the land of Palestine at that point of time came to be known as the Zionist movement. The concept of the Zionist movement was not new at that point, but it is said to have taken place specifically during the late 19th century. And it specifically took place after an Austro-Hungarian Jewish journalist published a book called The Jewish State, and the name of this journalist was Theodor Herzl. In this book, Theodor Herzl states the need for the creation of a Jewish state in the land of Palestine. Coming to 1914, this was the time of the First World War, and the Allied powers, including Great Britain and US, were on one side, and on the other side, they were fighting against Germany. During that time, the region of Palestine was under the control of the Ottoman Empire, and the Ottoman Empire at this point was supporting Germany. Now, it was also during the First World War in 1917 that the British issued the Balfour Agreement, which promised a national home for the Jewish community in the region of Palestine. Now, the Jewish community was promised this land in exchange of their support to defeat the Ottoman Empire and Germany in the First World War. In 1918, when the war ends, the Allied powers of US and Great Britain won the war, and as a result, the League of Nations issued a British mandate which allowed the British government to take over and control the region of Palestine, which was earlier in control of the Ottoman Empire. Now, it is also important to note that at this point, the League of Nations was heavily influenced by the Western powers of Great Britain and the US. While the Jewish community was happy with the Balfour Declaration, Palestinian Arabs, on the other hand, were disappointed and were not in favor of this declaration. At the same time of the Balfour Declaration, the British also promised the Arabs that they would provide them with independence if they defeat the Ottoman Empire with the help of the Arabs. And at the same time, they made a secret deal with the French government, which was known as Sykes-Picot, that mentioned a large part of Palestine would come under international administration, and the remaining region of Palestine would be divided between the British and the French. This agreement violated the promise that was made by the British government to the Arabs, as when they took control of Palestine, all the Palestinian Arabs, they did not become independent. Rather, they were now being governed under the British rule. The population of Palestine in 1922 was about 757,000 people, out of which 590,000 people were Muslims, about 83,000 people were Jewish, and 73,000 people were Christians. Between 1922 and 1935, the Jewish population increased from 9% to 27%. Between 1920s and 1940s, hundreds of thousands of Jews fled from Europe, specifically the regions that were influenced by Hitler. It is important to note that Hitler is responsible for the Holocaust. He is responsible for the killing of 6 million Jews during that time period. And as a result, the Holocaust survivors had to flee from Europe, as mentioned earlier, to the region of Palestine. After the end of the Second World War in 1947, Great Britain asked the UN for the solution of the region of Palestine. So the UN made a resolution which was known as Resolution 181. This resolution proposed a two-state solution for the Palestine region, which meant that one part of the region would be given to the Jews and the other part of the region would be for the Palestinian Arabs. According to this Resolution 181, which was also the Partition Plan, about 55% of the land was given to the Jewish community, about 45% of the land was given to the Palestinian Arabs, and Jerusalem was said to be under international administration. The Jewish community was extremely happy with the Partition Plan. However, the Arabs, they were not happy and not in favor of the partition plan. They believed that it was another way of the British government to exercise their control over the Palestinian region. In 1948, the Jewish community created the State of Israel and declared independence. Just one day after the creation of an independent State of Israel, the Arabs from the neighboring states, including Egypt, Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon, they attacked Israel. They believed that this new state would be eradicated. However, this war lasted for about a year, and Israel surprisingly came out to be the victor of this war. And in this war, the regions that were earlier given to the Palestinian population were now taken away from them. The West Bank region was taken up by Jordan, the Gaza Strip was taken up by Egypt. This war displaced about 750,000 Palestinian Arabs from their land, and they became homeless. In 1956, the Suez Canal War began. On one side, it was Egypt, and on the other side, it was the union of Israel, UK, and France. The war took place because Egypt announced the nationalization of the Suez Canal region and at the same time banned Israeli ships from using the Suez Canal region. It is important to note that at that point, the Suez Canal was collectively owned by the British and the French governments. During a summit that was held in Egypt in 1964, the creation of a Palestinian organization took place, which was known as the Palestine Liberation Organization. And the goal of this organization was to unite the Arab population and create a liberating state of Palestine with the help of arms and weapons. Then again, in 1967, Egypt banned Israeli ships from using the Strait of Tiran, which connected the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aqaba. The situation escalated, and as a result, Israel planned a surprise attack on Egypt. This war lasted for about 6 days, and Israel won this war. Not only that, but Israel captured the region of Sinai Peninsula, which was under the control of Egypt, and controlled it from there on. Israel also captured the Golanites from Syria, the Gaza Strip, which was under the control of Egypt at that point, and the West Bank region, which was under the control of Jordan. But after the 1967 war, about 300,000 Palestinians were displaced. Not only that, but after Israel occupied West Bank in 1967, Israeli population started to settle down in the West Bank region, and it is estimated that currently about 600,000 to 750,000 Israelis have settled illegally in the West Bank region. Now, the whole Israeli settlement in the West Bank region is considered as illegal settlement by the international law, as this violates the UN Partition Plan that was created back in 1947. And then in 1973, another war began between the Arab nations and Israel. However, in 1974, the UN recognized the PLO, or the Palestine Liberation Organization, as the legitimate representative of the Palestinian population. Then, in 1979, Israel and Egypt held peaceful talks, and Egypt became the first Arab nation to recognize Israel as a country. And after this peace negotiation and agreement, Israel returned the Sinai Peninsula to Egypt. Coming to 1993, Israel and Palestine, for the very first time, came this close to successfully negotiating peaceful talks. Israel and Palestine recognized each other as states, and an administrative body was created, which was known as the Palestine Authority. Now, this agreement was known as the Oslo Accords, and according to this agreement, the region of West Bank was divided into 3 areas. Area A, which was about 18% and was under the control of the Palestinian government. Area B, which had joint control of both the Israeli and the Palestinian government and had about 22% of the land. And Area C, which held about 60% of the land and was under the control of the Israeli government. After this agreement, after the Oslo Accords, both the Prime Minister of Israel and the President of Palestine, they received Nobel Peace Prize. But this peace was short-lived, as in 1995, Israeli Prime Minister was killed by an extremist which opposed the peace talks that were held between the two nations. Not only that, but Israel did not stand on its promise and did nothing about the Israeli settlements in the West Bank region. Since 2002, Israel has constructed a separation wall, of which 85% lies within the West Bank region and not the internationally recognized border. And the thing is that whichever leader from both these sides stood up for peaceful negotiations was not able to find support of their people, be it the assassination of the Israeli Prime Minister in 1995 or the weakening of the PLO at the hands of Hamas. We have not talked about Hamas in this video, as this video is only an introductory video about the history, the historical context of the conflict between Israel and Palestine. We will cover Hamas in a separate video. With this, I would like to end this video, and I hope that we witness a peaceful negotiation and agreement out of this war. If you found this video valuable, please share it with your friends and family. And also, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you for watching the video.